Welcome back, everyone. We're doing another fun episode with Maisie Franklin. You may have been around last week when we did this, and we had a blast and a half, and we're doing it again. Why? Because I just can't get enough of this woman and her writing and her storytelling and her reading aloud, and so suffer you guys. Okay. Welcome back, Melinda. I'm so glad you're here. I know you're writing under the pen name Maisie Franklin because you're going to share with us another of your cozy mystery stories. This one is Bored to Death, and it is from the Hy and Drye Mystery series. Before we get into the specifics of the book, there are a lot of genre definitions that float out in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Some people know them, some people don't, and some people kind of get them cross pollinated.
Mm.
So I'm curious about what is your genre definition of a cozy mystery?
So, Cozy Mystery. First of all, thank you again for having me. It's so wonderful to be here playing with you again.
I told you you can come back as often as you like.
So, Cozy Mystery, when most people's first thought of Cozy Mystery is, we'll say Murder, She Wrote, because that's the go-to standard that everybody
Sure.
thinks of. Traditionally, it's been an older woman who is more observant than your average everyday ranger yogi bear type, but better than the average bear. But it's always in a small town or a contained setting. And they usually have a quirky, very familiar coded job like librarian or bookstore owner or they're a knitting grandma sometimes but
Well,
uh
in the case of Angela Lansbury, didn't she play the part of an author?
she was
I remember a typewriter featuring prominently in the opening sequence.
yes, but she was a retired teacher before she
Okay.
became the author. And so that was, that was her background. That was, well, where she drew all of her observations was from the years of her teaching.
Hmm.
And she pulled all of that into her writing, which then, of course, she became the bestseller. And with her expertise, was able to help various and sundry law enforcement officers solve their cases from week to week. So that's
I love
typically
the notion that police officers need retired old ladies' help. I
the
just think that is such a fun idea.
yeah, I mean the concept always sells. But it's familiar and safe,
Mm,
that's kind of what's got to be there for it to be a cozy mystery as opposed to just a mystery.
Now, when I
Um,
was managing a bookshop, we had a lot of people come in and ask for cozy mysteries. And the
mhm.
requirement was always, is there a cat on the cover? So,
Animals are a typical trope. Sometimes it's cats, sometimes it's dogs, but there's almost always an animal involved. Almost. Not always, but almost. There's always an ensemble cast
mhm.
that circulate around your protagonist. And um the protagonist always seems to come from that background that justifies their observant skills,
Sure.
their ability. It just, makes it more believable.
Yeah.
Um,
And
so
then I guess the other major thing requirement in a cozy mystery is all the blood, guts, gore happen off stage,
off page,
right?
off page.
We don't see that. We don't really get into descriptions of it. It's a much gentler mystery.
Yes. You never see it happen on the page. You may see bits and pieces of the aftermath. You never see the actual event happen. You almost always, the main character is, I mean, the victim is almost always unlikable.
Yeah.
Um,
Right.
again, there have been a few instances, where very successful cozies will have somebody who's not a dislikable character, but more often than not, the trope is that they are unlikable and unsavory. And there is always a law enforcement or authority figure who is against the person's meddling. Like there's some warning
Mm.
even though they may be helping them, there's always some warning in there that says, you really need to leave this to the cops. Let them do their job.
So it's that Scooby-Doo thing, right? Meddling kids, don't get in the way, let the grown-ups do their thing. And that translates into the adult world in you're a nice retired old lady. Why are you bothering with this?
And there's always a ruh Raggy.
Yeah. Okay, before we get into the reading of the book, I want to make sure that everybody listening understands there's a mild listener advisory for this story. There is some language that maybe little children shouldn't be privy to. So if you have little ears listening, please preview this episode before you let the little ones listen. Okay, tell me about Bored to Death.
So, Bored to Death has been a long time coming. It is the first installment in the Hy and Drye series. Hy and Drye Mysteries revolve around two main protagonists. They are co-protagonists. It is Hy Reynolds and Eugenia Drye. Hy is a retired rough and gruff detective with over 30 years on the force. And Eugenia Drye is a retired librarian who both of them are widows. And let me tell you, there's very widow that Eugenia Drye doesn't know about her neighbors. And Hy has always prided himself on being a good listener, even when he shouldn't be. So the two of them and their meddlesome habits are the bane of their adult children's existences. So when they individually threaten to sideline their parents by putting them in assisted living homes, the two intrepid investigators decide to take a freedom cruise
To
and live out their
cahoots.
yes, and live their retirement out on a cruise ship. And that's what makes Hy and Dry a little bit different than your average everyday cozy. You still have a contained setting. We just put our small town on water.
So
And
does that mean that there's a little bit of a closed door mystery element to this series then? Because they are kind of on a boat?
yeah, nobody can get off. So yeah, so that your murderer is somewhere there and has not, unless they're a triathlon swimmer, probably did not jump ship.
I love the idea of mixing cozy mystery with closed door mystery.
Mm,
That's a really cool idea. I like
yeah.
it. I like it.
But what made this one really special for me is I felt that there was an underserved or not necessarily served properly demographic out there. We often see in cozy mysteries that are out on the shelves today, when we do see an older protagonist, um, the humor comes from them being doddering or,
Mm, yeah,
or it's almost like their agency has been taken away. And I wanted to create characters that gave that agency back, that reminds people that age is just a number, and that quite often our elders are much more capable and still capable than we give them credit for.
absolutely.
And so nothing that happens in this book pokes fun at, their age. If anything, their age is leveraged to be a strength. And so
That's a fantastic idea. I love that.
yeah, so that and they were and they're both extraordinary. I mean, I may be tooting my own horn, but they're so funny. They're so funny. And the banter that goes between them is one of the
Sometimes you
highlights.
gotta let the characters do what they do.
Absolutely.
I am excited to hear a little bit of this. I haven't read this book yet, but I'm looking forward to it. So when you are ready, please, Maisie Franklin, take the microphone and read aloud from Bored to Death.
I will certainly do that. One quick note is each of these chapters vacillates between Hy's point of view, and then there is a clear differentiator, and it switches into Eugenia's point of view. So, two ways of looking at the same mystery.
Perfect.
Here we go. Bored to Death, a Hy and Drye mystery. I'd survived stakeouts, shootouts, and three ex-wives. But nothing prepared me for the pure hell of my daughter trying to sign me up for goat yoga. Retirement my ass. I scratched my jaw, feeling the wiry bristles of my mustache, grizzled enough to have its own backstory, just like the rest of me. At 68, I wasn't ready for shuffleboard and all-you-can-eat pudding cups. But try telling that to my daughter Gloria. Instead of embracing my golden years with Tai Chi and decaf, I'd taken up a hobby that suited me just fine. Sitting at the Palm Vista Golf Club's bar, drinking coffee like it was a police interrogation, and quietly observing the high crimes and misdemeanors of the rich and restless. I leaned against the polished mahogany, my stocky frame settling in like a well-worn jacket. The air reeked of freshly mowed greens, expensive cologne, and regret, mostly from the poor schmucks who'd bet against their own golf game. Golf clubs were just country clubs with an athletic alibi, and I didn't trust a single person in plaid pants. Speaking of which, sure, sure, Marjorie, Roger Whittaker chuckled. His belly strained against a polo shirt that had lost a battle with his midsection. His plaid pants were so loud they should have come with a noise complaint. Last night was certainly a hole-in-one, if you catch my drift. Marjorie, a woman with the look of a Botoxed tabby cat, shot him a scandalized glare. Roger, keep your voice down. What if someone hears? Who'd believe it? Roger winked. Just two old friends discussing golf techniques. Marjorie snorted, rolling her eyes. I barely had to squint through my detective instincts to see the flashing neon sign over their heads. Guilty of something. Now, I'd been retired for a few years, but I still had the nose for a good mystery, and the only thing that stood out worse than a bad lie was two people who thought they were good at it. I adjusted my stance, pretending to study a brochure on putter grips while my ears honed in like a radio scanning for police chatter. My elbow rested on the bar next to a folded copy of the Miami Herald, left behind by some other patron. Half paying attention, I let my eyes drift across the front page headline. SEC launches investigation into CEO of Centurion Enterprises. Below it was a grainy photograph of some bigwig in a suit mid-stride, turning his head away from the camera like he wanted no part of it. He wasn't fast enough. I could still make out the sharp set of his jaw, a receding hairline, and, most notably, a gaudy ring glinting on his right hand. Marjorie, darling, Roger crooned, oblivious to my eavesdropping. I must admit, our little sessions have improved my, stamina on the course. Stamina, indeed, Marjorie murmured, her lashes fluttering enough to create a light breeze. I made a noise in the back of my throat. Only thing more predictable than death and taxes? Old men who thought they were George Clooney, but were more like Danny DeVito in a leisure suit. Scandalous, I muttered to myself, savoring the word like a fine bourbon. I could already see tomorrow's headline. Local golf pro caught playing more than just the back nine. Marjorie leaned in, her eyes darting around, then settling on me. Shh, you never know who's listening, Roger laughed. Relax. The only thing Reynolds is catching these days are Z's on the clubhouse sofa. I sipped my coffee and smirked. They had no idea that retirement had only made me better at my job. The thing about police work is that after decades of reading liars, trail, the habit doesn't go away. It's like muscle memory. Roger and Marjorie had my attention now, and my imagination teed off, launching me straight into possibilities. A secret affair, hidden debts, a scandal bubbling beneath the surface like a geyser ready to blow. Imagine, I mused, a clandestine love affair right here in the sand traps of suburbia. Of course, knowing my luck, they were probably just two golf nerds swapping pointers on their short game. Still, old habits died hard, and I liked a good mystery. A voice behind me scolded. Really, Dad? I froze. My instinct, sharpened from years of catching criminals in their lies, recognized that tone immediately. Long-suffering, patient, and probably mildly homicidal. Gloria. I turned, greeted by the sight of my daughter standing with her hands on her hips. Not the tailored power stance of a CEO, but the battle-ready posture of a woman who had wrangled kids, groceries, and her father's nonsense, all in one afternoon. Her windblown hair was shoved into a haphazard ponytail, and the outline of a juice box stain decorated her sleeve, clear evidence of a day spent in the trenches of suburban warfare. She eyed me like I was a kid caught sneaking cookies before dinner. Ugh, good grief, she sighed, shaking her head. You're like a truffle pig rooting for scandal. I leaned against the bar, unimpressed. I'm just observing human nature. Observing? She crossed her arms. Or stirring the pot until it boils over and scalds everyone within a 10-foot radius. I shrugged. Tomato, tomato. She exhaled through her nose the way she used to when I caught her sneaking out past curfew as a teenager. Dad, you do realize you're about as inconspicuous as a flamingo at a penguin party? That's offensive, I said, wounded. I blend. She pinched the bridge of her nose. Yeah, well, the last time you blended, we ended up being banned from the neighborhood watch meeting because you convinced Mrs. Henderson her cat was an undercover spy. I'm telling you that Russian blue had unusually shifty eyes. Gloria leveled me with the look. The one that had the uncanny power to make me regret every decision leading up to that moment. Look, Dad, she softened her voice, her eyes scanning mine. Retirement hasn't been easy on you, especially without Mom. I get it. But there are better ways to occupy your time than playing Sherlock Holmes at the golf club. You're saying like that it's an option. It is an option, she said, stepping closer. Or you can keep this up, and I'll have no choice but to follow through on my promise. I frowned. What promise? Gloria folded her arms. Shady Pines. Shady Pines. The assisted living facility. A fate worse than death. Gloria, I said carefully, you wound me. She arched a brow. You brought this on yourself. I sighed dramatically, tossing a glance to the heavens. Fine. No more sleuthing, no more eavesdropping, no more mild espionage. Happy? She considered this. I'll take mild espionage over full-blown neighborhood spy. Deal. Her shoulders loosened and she smiled. Thank you. Anything for my girl. We stood there for a moment, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows over the green. I could still smell the freshly cut grass, hear the distant thwack of a golf club meeting its target. I should have been satisfied, but I wasn't, because old detectives don't just stop detecting, and something told me trouble was brewing, whether I went looking for it or not. Who knew it would stand all of 5 foot nothing and come wrapped in a cardigan? A good librarian knows that the most important things in life are cataloged, cross-referenced, and preferably wrapped in something practical, like a well-loved sweater or an airtight alibi. Well, that's what I told myself as I navigated the grocery store, my soft-soled shoes making no noise against the worn tile, my trusty cardigan tucked firmly around my shoulders like armor. I was, as always, on a mission. This time, for prunes. The produce section smelled faintly of citrus and Axe body spray. I lingered in front of the dried fruit display, adjusting my glasses as I scrutinized the options. Whole prunes or prune juice? It was a question old as time, or at least as old as dietary fiber awareness. I picked up a package and examined it with the same meticulous attention I'd once given to first edition manuscripts at the library. The Petite d'Agen plum, the foundation of all fine prunes, has been cultivated since the 12th century. Most people didn't appreciate the complexities of prune production, but I did. Excuse me, young man. I beckoned to a nearby stock boy whose name tag declared him to be Tyler, and the source of the pungent body spray. Have you heard any feedback on the efficacy of these prunes? Tyler blinked, shifting the crate of bananas in his arms like I'd asked him who signed the Magna Carta. King John of England for inquiring minds. Uh, I don't know, ma'am. Oh, a pity. Young people these days lacked curiosity. Well, I pressed on, undeterred. Prunes are not just dried plums, you see. They come from a specific varietal, one that thrives in California, descended from the esteemed Petite d'Agen, which was introduced to the region during the gold rush. Tyler's eyes darted toward an exit, but I was just getting to the interesting part. It's fascinating, really. Did you know that commercial prune orchards are often threatened by wildfire season? The smoke affects their sugar content. This is particularly interesting when considering their laxative properties. But alas, I had lost him. Tyler had slipped away, abandoning to my research like a fair weather scholar in a difficult course. Kids these days, I muttered, sighing as I returned back to the prune section. I was about to settle my internal debate, juice or whole, when movement near the melon display caught my attention. Mildred Jansen. I narrowed my eyes. My neighbor, widow, volunteer bridge instructor, serial late returner of borrowed books. And unless my vision was failing me, she was not alone. I pulled my cardigan tighter and maneuvered myself behind an imposing pyramid of cantaloupes and honeydew, a sturdy fruit-based fortress. Mildred was laughing, not her polite, committee-appropriate laugh, a real hands-on-the-arm laugh, the kind that suggested secrets. I should have brought my binoculars. I leaned ever so slightly for a better look, just a whisper of movement. Unfortunately, my elbow whispered right into the precarious edge of the cantaloupe display. The first melon teetered, then the second, and before I could blink, melon mayhem. Cantaloupes tumbled from their perch like boulders in an Indiana Jones movie. Oh, Lordy, but that Harrison Ford was still a looker. Rolling but with slow, inevitable destruction. One clipped a stack of sweet potatoes, which promptly joined the rebellion, scattering in every direction. I gasped, stumbled backwards, and in an unfortunate twist of fate, tripped over a display of plastic-wrapped celery. Celery, in case you were wondering, is not a particularly forgiving thing to land on. There was silence. Then, "Clean up and produce," a voice called, entirely too delighted by my misfortune. A ripple of amusement swept through the shoppers, a few stifled laughs. I muttered, Did she just take out the cantaloupes? From a man near the apples. The store employees appeared as if summoned by incantation, aprons rustling, brooms and dustpans materializing. One young worker, clearly an example of just how far an English degree went these days, chided. Melancholy disaster. I adjusted my glasses, willing my dignity to remain intact. Quite fine, thank you, I told a young clerk offering to help me up. Just a little research going awry. Another chuckle from the peanut gallery. I spotted my chance to escape, a narrow gap between the bagged salads and the bakery. I turned to make my retreat. Mother! I froze. There was no mistaking that voice. Stuart. My son stood tall, pressed and utterly disapproving, his arms crossed in the stance he usually reserved for courtroom cross-examinations. His navy suit remained impeccably ruffled, as though even his irritation had been pre-approved by the firm. His calfskin briefcase sat on the floor beside him. "What on earth are you doing?" he demanded. I straightened my cardigan. "Grocery shopping." He exhaled sharply. "This is exactly what I was talking about." "Stuart, please," I whispered, acutely aware of our audience. "Mother," he said, voice lower, but no less judgmental. "We discussed this. The prying, the unnecessary dramatics. Do you want to end up in the home?" I stiffened. There it was. The threat. Stuart had long been dangling the home over my head. A retirement community, he insisted, was a vibrant, welcoming place. And I insisted was one step away from being taxidermied in a rocking chair. Was it too late to consider putting him up for adoption? "You wouldn't dare," I said, voice like iron. "Mother," he said in that calm, lawyerly tone, "don't test me." A soft ripple of sympathetic laughter ran through the crowd. "You realize some of my clients spend their entire careers trying to manipulate the system, and somehow you, armed with a cantaloupe and a cardigan, still manage to cause damage? Well, ought to hold it accountable." With great dignity, I stepped forward, sidestepping a runaway sweet potato, and adjusted my glasses. "Let's get you home," Stuart sighed, already steering me toward checkout. "Oh, yes. It's about time I checked my gnome nanny cam. Either it's caught the porch thief or I've accidentally recorded 3 days of Mr. Braxton speed walking shirtless at dawn," I declared. "Either way, it's a win-win." Stuart pinched the bridge of his nose. We walked toward the parking lot in Stuart's Beamer. He muttered the whole way. I eyed him sidelong. As he opened the car door, I spotted a folder jammed into his briefcase, half tucked, half forgotten. A motion stuck out from it. I could just make out the case name. Estate of Rosetta Bianchi versus Centurion Enterprises. And then, in smaller letters, dismissed with prejudice. The name Centurion Enterprises jangled alarm bells in my head, but I had more pressing things to worry about. Mildred Jansen's secret companion, a mystery that remained unsolved. And if Stuart had his way, I was running out of time. But I had a sharp brain and I had prunes.
Oh my gosh. So much fun. The visual of this woman with binoculars in the grocery store just completely threw me on the floor. Oh my gosh, you are so much fun. Um, who's your favorite character in this book?
Oh, it's a dead on tie. I love them both. And it just gets more fun from here. The meet cute that happens between them is hilarious. Um, how they go about maneuvering on the ship to try to investigate is hilarious. Um, Writing characters like this is such an absolute joy. And it keeps me coming back to put butt in seat
Yeah.
day after day, even on the days where I don't really feel like it. And I'm
We've
like,
all had those days.
yeah. But then you're like, "Ugh, I wonder what Hy and Eugenia are going to be up to today. Yeah.
Well, and
So,
that was the other thing I wanted to ask you is how much of this is intentional and how much of this is just the universe pouring stuff into your imagination?
I'm a plantser. I am a hybrid animal that plots a loose outline. So I know where all my main beats are and when
Hmm.
I have to get to them in order to keep the structure of the book intact and not have that dreadful sagging middle. But then I am also a pantser. My characters go off book all the time. Um, and I can't even tell you the nights that I lay in bed and they're still talking. And I'm like, guys, I really do need to go to sleep, or none of us is going to be doing anything tomorrow. So sometimes it is definitely, the universe whispering in my ear. But there's always a loose master plan.
So at the very least, you have a rudder on the situation.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So. Very loose, very
How
loose.
many books do you have planned or do you imagine will happen in the Hy and Dry Mystery series?
Well, the next book is called Naughty Boy, but it's Buoy. All of uh the titles have to do with nautical puns.
Well, they
Um,
would have to. Your stories take place on a boat.
yep, every one of them takes place on a cruise. This one took them to the Bahamas. I didn't want to send them on a long run because it didn't make sense for me for the
Mm,
characters. Because yes, they were bold enough to take the step to go on this freedom cruise, but they didn't want to overcommit to
sure.
actually selling everything and you
Keep
know,
it within manageable parameters,
right.
right?
But yeah, so they would definitely be on a ship for absolutely every episode. Currently there are 10 books planned.
That's
We
gonna be fun.
Yeah, we have the titles and the rough cuts for most of them. And it'll be just as each one comes up, we'll take it from rough cut through our development engine and make it
That's
a
super
fully formed
fun.
idea.
That is super fun. I look forward to seeing more of these characters. They're a blast. I mean, I had to turn my microphone off because I was laughing really hard. And
Always a good sign.
I didn't
Always a
want
good
to
sign.
interrupt the reading with me laughing because that's distracting. But yeah, mhm, yeah, good
Yeah.
stuff. Good
I
stuff.
I wrote a book I would want to read about
Mm,
people that, you know, I mean, let's face it, I know these people. They may have different names, but they are an amalgamation of, my grandfather, my mom and dad, yeah, I have my grandfather, I mean, granted, this is back in the 70s when people didn't really frown on that thing, but he would take me, around and hang out with his buddies. He'd hand me an empty bank envelope and say, "I want you to go around all these guys and tell them you're my granddaughter." And I'm like, okay. So I'd go around and they would all put quarters in the bank envelope. And then I would take that envelope, go over to the jukebox, and I would only ever play one song, Hound Dog, Elvis Presley, and proceeded to table dance
Oh my gosh.
at 4. So that should explain a lot
Okay,
right
yeah,
there,
that gives us a really
right
good
there
frame of reference for where your imagination lives.
on a tabletop dancing to Elvis Presley singing Hound Dog.
Perfect. It is always such an absolute joy to have you on the program. And since you have at least 10 more books, I hope you'll come back and read more for me.
Absolutely.
Cool. Thank you so much. I hope you have an awesome day.
You too. Bye, guys.